She was sitting there, hunched over herself like someone trying to disappear into the fabric of her own coat, the kind of posture that speaks of defeat louder than any cry. It was late afternoon, and the wind carried that dry chill that makes everything feel a little more fragile. I hadn't meant to stop. I had coffee in hand, a book under my arm, a schedule to return to, but I saw her shoulders trembling before I heard her voice. "I'm too fat to be loved," she said, almost like she was speaking to no one at all. I don't know what part of me answered. Not the part trained to keep a polite distance from strangers, not the part that measures words before speaking. Just something honest and still, like a quiet place I didn't know I had inside. "You're too perfect to be ignored," I said. She looked up like I'd hit her, not with force, but with surprise. Her eyes were red, but not wild. They were calm in a way that unsettled me, like she'd already rehearsed all her defenses and was startled to find she didn't need them. There was a long pause. Then she turned her face away again, wiped it with the sleeve of her coat. "I'm sorry. That was dramatic," she whispered. I sat on the far edge of the bench, not too close, not too casual, just there. "You don't have to apologize for hurting," I replied. She didn't speak again for a while. We sat like that, the quiet stretching between us, filled only with the wind and the occasional shuffle of leaves across the pavement. I didn't ask her name. I didn't need to. She was a person in pain, and sometimes names come later. "I wasn't even crying because of that," she said eventually. "I mean, not only that. I had this interview, my third this month. I wore something my sister said was flattering, which is her polite way of saying, 'Don't embarrass us.' I walked into that room, and I could feel them judging me before I sat down. I listened. That's all I did. And she kept going. I've been trying so hard to be, I don't know, acceptable, hireable, dateable, lovable, but I always feel like I'm failing at all of it." She stopped and laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that sounds like it used to be a sob. "I didn't mean to dump all this on you." "You didn't," I said. "You shared. There's a difference." That made her glance at me again, more curious this time than defensive. There was a question in her eyes, but she didn't ask it. She just nodded, slowly. "I'm Laura," she said. Eventually, "Michael." We shook hands like people who've just realized they're in the middle of something they didn't plan for, not a moment exactly, but the beginning of one. She looked down at our hands, still gently touching. "I don't usually cry in public. I don't usually talk to strangers on benches," I said. She smiled, just barely. "Maybe we're both off script today. Maybe we were, or maybe the script we'd been following never fit us in the first place. It wasn't planned. I wasn't trying to see her again, but 3 days later, she was there. Same bench, same hour, different coat. She saw me first this time and didn't look away. I offered a small nod, like asking a silent question. She answered with a gesture to the seat beside her. No words exchanged until I sat down, 2 coffees in hand. I gave her one without explanation. She accepted it without question. That felt like trust. We didn't jump into anything. Small talk floated between us like warm air on a cold morning. The coffee shop behind us buzzed with life, but we sat in the quiet layer outside of it. A pocket of stillness neither of us seemed eager to leave. "I thought about what you said," she murmured after a while. "That I'm too perfect to be ignored. It sounded like something from a movie, but it didn't feel fake. It wasn't." She glanced at me then, longer than before, as if searching for cracks, waiting for the catch. But I didn't have any rehearsed lines. Just the truth, in whatever form it came out. "I've heard all kinds of things," she said, "most of them dressed up as compliments. You're pretty for your size. You have a nice face, or the worst one. You'd be stunning if you lost a little weight. People think they're being kind when they say that. They think they're giving me something." "What they're doing," I said, "is taking something from you." That made her pause. We moved from the bench to the coffee shop eventually. The inside was crowded, and there was only one table left, small, intimate. She hesitated, and I could see it. The internal weighing of whether she was taking up too much space, physically or emotionally. I sat down first, not to push, but to anchor. She followed. We sipped in silence for a few moments. Then she asked, "Do you always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're not trying to fix me." "No," I said. "I just don't think you're broken. Her hands tightened around the mug. She didn't cry this time. She didn't need to. The silence that followed was heavy with something different. Recognition, maybe. Not of me, not yet, but of the way I saw her, like she had a place. Like she didn't need to apologize for sitting across from someone and just being. She told me little things. How she used to love drawing but stopped because every time she showed her art, people commented more on her appearance than her work. How she sometimes pretends to enjoy dating apps just to feel normal, even though they make her feel disposable. I didn't try to make her feel better. I let her speak, and I stayed. That seemed to mean more than anything I could have said. Before we parted, she asked, "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because I see you." She didn't answer right away, just looked at me as if that answer was both too much and not enough. Then, almost in a whisper, "No one ever says that like they mean it." "I do." She walked away without promising to see me again, but she left with the coffee sleeve, the one with my name scribbled on it. Not a number, just a name, a simple offering, and sometimes that's enough to begin. She called me a week later, no text, no warning, just a soft voice on the other end of the line, uncertain and careful. "I don't know why I'm calling," she said. "I just didn't want to sit with today by myself." That's reason enough. We didn't make plans, not exactly. I offered to meet her wherever she felt like being. She chose a quiet bookstore with an attached cafe. She showed up with a bag slung over her shoulder and a stiffness in her steps that made it clear. This wasn't just another outing. This was her trying. We sat by the window. She ordered tea. I didn't ask why she looked like she hadn't slept. I waited. "My mum called this morning," she said, eyes on her cup. Asked how the interviews were going. Then she asked if I'd tried that diet thing again. Like success and weight loss are the same thing. I didn't interrupt. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired in a way that made my chest feel too small. "She told me once that no man wants to love someone who doesn't love herself." I think she meant it as encouragement, but it never felt like it. It felt like permission to keep me unchosen. She wasn't telling me for advice. She was building a bridge, and I knew better than to paint over the cracks. I listened. That's all she seemed to need. "I used to think I was strong," she continued. "I was the funny friend, the smart one, the helper. I didn't mind fading into the background because it made things easier. But lately, it just feels like I disappeared from my own life." I reached for my cup, held it like a grounding point. "Sometimes strength looks like survival," I said, "but sometimes it looks like stopping long enough to admit you're tired." She exhaled, slowly. Not relief, not yet, but recognition. "I don't want to be a project," she said. "You're not. I don't want someone to fix me. I wouldn't know how." That made her laugh, soft, unsure, but real. She looked at me then, not in search of approval, but as if wondering if I'd still be there once the raw parts showed. I didn't move. That was my answer. "You make it sound so simple," she said. "Simple isn't the same as easy." Her silence stretched again, but it wasn't empty. It was a pause filled with possibility, like a breath taken before a step forward. She looked outside the window for a long time, then back at me. "I keep thinking I have to earn everything, even rest, even kindness." "You don't have to earn what you already deserve." She blinked, and I saw it just for a moment, the part of her that wanted to believe me. It hadn't won yet, but it was awake now, listening. We stayed until the light shifted, until the cafe emptied and the books around us became shadows. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. "Would it be too much if I asked to see you again?" "No," I said. "It would be just enough." She nodded, and this time, when she walked away, there was less weight in her steps. Not none, but less. And that, somehow, felt like the beginning of something neither of us had words for yet. We began meeting without planning. At first it was coincidence, passing each other on the same street, both reaching for the door to the same coffee shop. Then, slowly, it became habit. Familiarity built itself quietly between us, like a well-worn path formed not by force, but by repetition. We never talked about what we were becoming. We just returned to the same table, the same conversations, until it no longer felt strange to expect her there. Laura didn't always speak much at first. Some days, she just stirred her coffee in silence, eyes tracing the rim of her mug like the answers to her questions might appear there. I never filled the quiet. I knew somehow that if I did, I'd be taking something from her. She needed the space more than she needed the noise. One morning, after a long silence, she said, "I hate mirrors." I looked at her, but didn't speak. Not because I think I'm ugly. Not exactly. I just don't trust what I see. I can feel fine until I catch my reflection, and suddenly it's like I'm back in high school, hearing them laugh behind me, like I'm not allowed to forget. I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't interrupt. I let the weight of her words land where they needed to. I used to think I was just being sensitive, she continued, that maybe if I toughened up, it wouldn't matter. But it does. It still does. She took a shaky breath. I feel like I'm constantly trying to shrink, not just physically, but in every way. Like if I take up less space, people will be more comfortable. I won't be the too much girl. I didn't say she wasn't too much. I knew she wouldn't believe it yet. Instead, I reached behind me, took off my jacket, and draped it gently over her lap. She looked at me, confused at first. Then she understood. "You don't have to hide," I said. "Not from me." She held onto the fabric like it was an anchor, and the tension in her shoulders softened just a little. That afternoon, we walked. No destination, no urgency, just the rhythm of two people learning how to move beside each other. She told me about a drawing she had started the night before, her first in months. She didn't show it to me. She didn't need to. The fact that it existed at all felt like a sacred offering. We stopped at a park bench, our bench now, though we never said that out loud, and watched the world pass. She leaned back, looked up at the sky. "I used to dream about disappearing," she said. "Not dying, just not being seen. It felt safer. Do you still?" "Sometimes, but lately, it's different. Now, I think about being seen and not flinching. That's a brave dream." She looked at me then, really looked, like she was weighing something. Then, without smiling, she said, "I don't know what you're doing to me." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just here." Her eyes shimmered with something unspoken, and for the first time, I saw her lean into the moment instead of pulling away from it. When we parted, she didn't say goodbye, just a soft "see you," like we had somewhere to return to, and we did. Not just a place, but a feeling, a rhythm, a beginning that no longer needed explanation. She came into the cafe just as the rain began, no umbrella, her hair clinging to her forehead, her coat spotted with water. She didn't apologize for being wet or late. She simply sat, exhaled, and looked at me with that quiet exhaustion I was beginning to recognize not as weakness but endurance. I reached into my bag without speaking and slid a wrapped package across the table toward her. She paused, surprised. Her eyes moved from the object to my face, cautious. "It's not a big deal," I said. "Just something I found." She unwrapped it slowly, carefully, like she wasn't sure she had permission. Inside was a book, the cover worn but intact, the pages slightly yellowed. On the inside cover, a handwritten note, "For whoever forgot they deserve all the good things." Her fingers hovered over the ink for a long time. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just sat with it, absorbing. "This was yours?" she asked. "Yes." "Now it's yours." There was something in the way she touched the book, as if it were fragile but also sacred, like she'd never been given something that wasn't attached to expectation. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to say anything." She stared at the words again, then closed the book and placed her hands over it. "Protective. I used to collect notes like this," she said quietly. "Affirmations. Things I'd write to myself on sticky notes. I'd put them on mirrors, in drawers. I needed them. But eventually they all felt like lies. I started ripping them down. That one's not a lie." She looked at me, something flickering behind her eyes. Resistance, maybe. Or hope, pushing against the fear. "Why are you like this?" she asked, almost accusing. "Why are you so gentle?" I considered that. "I don't think it's gentleness," I said. "I think it's just presence. I don't need you to be anything other than what you are." She pressed her lips together. Her hands were trembling slightly. "I don't trust things that feel safe," she admitted, "because they usually come right before the fall. "I'm not here to catch you," I said. "I'm just here to sit with you even if you fall." A silence settled between us again, not awkward, not empty, full. We stayed like that for a long time, two people with nowhere else to be. She drank her tea slowly, the steam curling around her like a shield. Before we left, she touched the cover of the book once more. "This matters," she said. "I know." She held it close as we stepped into the now light rain. I didn't offer my coat. She didn't ask, but we walked together, side by side, without rushing, and somehow that was enough. She didn't answer my call that evening, which wasn't unusual, but it didn't sit the same. Something in the silence felt different, heavier. The next morning, a single message arrived. "Can you meet me?" No punctuation, no details. I didn't ask questions. When I found her, she was standing outside an old apartment complex, arms crossed, eyes fixed on a patch of nothing. Her makeup was smeared in places, not from crying, but from the kind of weathered expression that comes after hours of holding it all in. She didn't speak right away. I didn't ask her to. "I went to lunch with my family," she said finally. Her voice was flat. "My sister's engagement lunch. Everyone was there." She looked at me, and the fight behind her eyes was raw. I didn't even sit down before someone said I looked healthier. You know what that means? And then came the usual how work's going, if I'm still single, if I've considered options, as if I'm some unsolved problem they keep circling back to. She didn't need my opinion. She just needed me to walk. So we did. Side by side, through streets neither of us were naming. Her steps were tight, almost rigid, like every muscle in her body was holding back a scream. "I'm always the outsider, even when I'm in the picture," she said. "They talk over me, around me, like my life is something to diagnose." She kicked a loose stone on the pavement, watched it skitter into the gutter. I kept thinking, maybe if I just lost the weight when I was younger, maybe if I were prettier, maybe if I had a story worth showing off, they'd stop trying to fix me and just include me. I didn't answer. She wasn't asking anything of me yet. She stopped at the edge of the park, the same one where we had once sat in silence and built something unnamed. I sat down on the bench first. She followed. Her hands were shaking slightly now. "I wanted to leave the table so many times," she whispered. "But I stayed. I smiled. I even laughed. And now I feel like I betrayed myself just to keep the peace." She looked down at her lap, her voice barely audible. "Why do I do that? Why do I let them make me feel small?" "Because you were taught that peace was more valuable than your voice," I said. Her eyes snapped to mine, surprised not by the words, but by how much they echoed her own. "You weren't wrong to want to be seen," I continued. "You were just around people who couldn't see properly." She swallowed hard, her throat moving like it hurt to breathe. "I don't want to need their approval," she said. "But some part of me still does. That part isn't weak, it's just tired." She leaned back on the bench, staring up at the sky, as if trying to convince herself the world was still turning. "They don't know me," she said after a while. "Not really. No," I said. "But I do." Her jaw tensed, like she was holding back the instinct to deflect. "And what do you see, Michael?" "I see a woman who's still standing, still showing up, still brave enough to feel everything, even when it hurts." The silence after that wasn't fragile, it was full. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. Her hand brushed against mine, just briefly, just enough. We sat there until the sun dipped low behind the trees, shadows stretching over the path in front of us. When we finally stood, she said, "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come to fix anything," I said. "Just to walk with you through it." She nodded, eyes soft but unreadable. And as we parted ways, I knew something had shifted, not in the way she saw me, but in the way she might one day see herself. She began changing in ways most people wouldn't notice. It wasn't in her clothes or her posture, not at first. It was in her pauses, shorter, steadier, in the way she looked people in the eye a moment longer than she used to, the way she let her voice linger when she spoke, instead of retreating from her own sentences. I didn't point it out. I knew it wasn't for anyone's applause. We were sitting in our usual cafe when she told me about the phone call. "My ex called last night," she said, "out of nowhere. Said he'd been thinking about me, that he missed how comfortable we were." She wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed on the steam rising from her mug, as if the story was still unfolding in it. I almost said yes, she admitted. Not because I wanted him back, but because it's easy to go back to something familiar, even if it hurt, especially if you've convinced yourself that's all you'll get. I didn't react. I didn't need to. But I didn't, she said. I told him no kindly, clearly. I've never done that before. She looked at me then, waiting not for praise, but to see if I understood how big it was. I did. Not because I'm angry, she added, but because I'm not that version of myself anymore. The one who stayed just to be chosen. I nodded. You didn't need to be chosen by him to be whole. She smiled, not broadly, but with a softness that told me she was beginning to believe it. Later that week, she cancelled a consultation for a cosmetic procedure her sister had pushed her toward, not out of rebellion, but because she realized she didn't want it. She told me about it over the phone, her voice calm, almost surprised. I thought I needed to change to be seen, she said, but maybe what I needed was someone who didn't ask me to. It was a slow process, and she still had days where her shoulders curled inward, when her words came out half-sized. But more and more, she was stepping into rooms without apologizing for taking up space. I saw it in how she stood. I heard it in her silence. She started drawing again, not for anyone else, just for herself. She showed me a sketch once, just a corner of it, peeking from her journal, and then quickly closed the book, like she'd revealed too much. But the fact that she'd shown me anything at all felt like a secret handed over. I don't know what we are, she said one night, as we walked along a street lit with soft amber lights. But when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to shrink. I stopped, turned to her. You never have to. She didn't answer, not with words. But she kept walking, and so did I, side by side. Neither of us rushing to define anything. We weren't hurrying towards something. We were just arriving, piece by piece. And in those small and steady steps, I could feel something taking root, quiet, patient, real. She disappeared for 3 days. No messages, no replies. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention, but still echoes in the places where her voice used to live. I didn't chase. I didn't flood her phone or press for answers. I knew enough to understand that sometimes retreat isn't rejection, it's survival. So I waited. And I left a note at the cafe written in ink that didn't shake. If you want to continue, I'm here. She came back on a Thursday. No dramatics, no explanations, just her, standing at the edge of our table, eyes dull but steady. I read your note, she said. I nodded. She sat. The silence between us wasn't cold. It was raw, like something delicate had cracked, and we were both watching it without touching it. I thought about not coming back, she said after a while. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was ashamed. Her fingers tightened around her cup. I got overwhelmed. Everything I've been trying to push through, my body, my family, my past, it all came rushing in at once. And I kept thinking, you don't need this. You don't need me breaking down on you. I need you to be real, I said. That includes the parts you don't show anyone. She looked at me then, truly looked, and I saw the cost of her walls. Not just the ones built to keep others out, but the ones she'd built to keep herself in. I didn't want to be a burden, she whispered. You're not. Her eyes watered, but she blinked them clear. She wasn't looking for rescue, just for confirmation that she hadn't ruined something by being human. You didn't ask for my mess, she said. I didn't come for something tidy. Her lip quivered, just slightly. I don't trust many people, she said. So you don't have to trust me all at once. I might disappear again, she warned. Then I'll be here again. She went still. Her breath caught, like that simple certainty was too much to hold all at once. I'm tired of proving my worth to people who only see half of me, she said. Then stop proving, just be. She didn't smile. Not yet. But something in her eased, her shoulders, her posture, her grip on the moment. She reached into her bag and pulled out the book I had given her, worn now, dog-eared. She placed it between us. I kept it with me, she said, even when I tried to let go of everything else. That's not a small thing. No, she said, it's not. We sat there for a long time, the city moving around us, indifferent, and in that small bubble of stillness, she made the choice to stay, not just with me, but with herself. And I knew, without needing to ask, that something had begun again, not where we left off, but somewhere deeper, somewhere real. It was a quiet Sunday when she asked me to go somewhere with her. No build-up, no nervous energy, just a message. "Are you free this afternoon?" I said yes, and a few hours later she was guiding me into a part of the city I didn't know. Old streets, fewer people, the kind of place where memory lingers in the corners. She didn't explain where we were going. I didn't ask. I trusted her silence as much as I trusted her voice. Eventually, we reached a small hill overlooking a worn-down playground, rusted swings, chipped paint on the slide, a crooked bench under an old tree. "I used to come here," she said, "before school, after arguments. When I wanted to disappear, this was where I went." She sat on the bench, not waiting for me. I joined her. The air around us felt thick with something unfinished. I'd sit here and watch other kids play. I was always the girl too big for the slide, too slow for tag, too nervous to join. But this place still felt like mine, because no one followed me here. No one tried to fix me. She paused, eyes scanning the empty space as if looking for her younger self. I think this is the first place I ever realized I was alone. I didn't rush to fill the moment. Her truth didn't need dressing. "And now?" I asked. She turned to me, slowly. "Now I want it to be the place I remember differently." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a sketch, rough, unfinished, but alive. The park, just as it was now. But in the drawing, two figures sat on the bench, one looking ahead, the other slightly turned, close. Still. "I drew this last night," she said. "I didn't know if I'd actually bring you here." "You did," she nodded. Her fingers trembled slightly as she folded the sketch again and slipped it back into her pocket. "I used to wait for people to choose me," she said, "to notice me, to make the first move, to see past the body. But that made me invisible, and I'm done waiting." She reached for my hand, not by accident, not by proximity, but by choice. Her fingers closed around mine with a steadiness that surprised us both. "This is me choosing," she said. I didn't answer with words. I just held her hand back, without flinching, without conditions. Not a promise spoken, but something settled between us. A quiet shift. We stayed until the light began to fall behind the trees, casting long shadows that didn't feel so heavy this time. She leaned her head against my shoulder, not for support, but for closeness. And in that shared silence, I felt it clearly. The first real yes, not loud, not dramatic, but honest. And hers. She stood in front of the mirror, not posing, not hiding, just standing. Her reflection caught in the glass, the late afternoon light casting soft edges around her. She wore a dress she once told me she hated, said it clung in the wrong places, made her look too visible. But now she was wearing it. Not for a party, not for anyone's approval, just for herself. "I used to avoid mirrors," she said without turning, "even the ones I passed in shop windows. I'd look at the ground, pretend I was focused on something else. I didn't move. I let her have the space. This dress used to scare me," she continued. "It showed my arms, my stomach, everything I was told to keep covered. To minimize." She turned toward me, her voice steady. "I don't love what I see yet, but I don't hate it. That's something—" "It's everything," I said. She gave a half smile. Not the kind that reaches for reassurance, but the kind that marks a quiet victory. "I think I believed for a long time that love was something you earned, like a prize for being good enough, thin enough, easy enough." She crossed the room, sat beside me without hesitation. "But you never asked me to be anything other than here." I nodded. There was nothing to correct, nothing to fix. She looked down at her hands, fingers fidgeting slightly, then stopped herself. "Sometimes I wait for the other shoe to drop," she admitted, "for you to realize I'm too much, or not enough." "I'm not waiting for a reason to leave," I said. "I'm staying because you're already enough." She exhaled, long, slow, a breath that had been waiting to be released. We ate dinner in quiet, comfortable rhythm. Simple food, shared space. No grand declarations. No moments curated for memory. Just two people who had begun to belong to something unspoken. After we cleared the plates, she lit a candle. Not for ambiance, but because she liked the scent. She told me she used to save things, Candles, good dishes, new clothes for some day. A day that felt worthy. Maybe today is worthy, she said. It is. She sat back, eyes soft, gaze steady. I'm scared, she said, that this will fade, that I'll lose this calm. You might, I said. We both might, but we'll find it again. She nodded, not with certainty, but with acceptance. Before I left, she stood at the door, looking at me the way someone looks at the first warm day after a long winter. She didn't ask for promises. She didn't need to. I'm not healed, she said, but I'm not hiding. I see you, I said. That's all I've ever needed. She reached out, took my hand for a moment. No fear in the gesture, no doubt, and in that moment, quiet and unremarkable, I knew something had changed, not into something louder or grander, but into something rooted, real, ongoing, something that didn't end here,